You've tuned into Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes. Your access to success strategies and more to help you move onward and upward with your life. Listen in each week as she interviews others who have really taken their essence to the next level and truly unpaused their life. Now here's your host, Dr. Callie Estes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Dr. Callie Estes, and I am founder of the Addictions Academy, the Addictions Coach, and Rehab Rescue. Welcome to Unpause Your Life. This is a great podcast where we showcase people who have done something extraordinary with their life. I welcome you, and I hope you enjoy all of our guests.
On my way, found a reason to wake up another day.
Before we get started, let's hear this short message from one of my supporters.
All the things that you won't do.
Did you know 81% of Americans would like to become a published author? Chances are you might be one of them. What's stopping you? Writing and publishing a book takes a lot of work and is expensive, right? Well, not anymore. For your next book project, or even your first, team up with Hassle-Free Books. They make it so easy to become an author. They remove all of the fuss and struggle and make it smooth and simple. And it's far more affordable than you could ever imagine. Go to hasslefreebooks.com and use promo code UNPAUSE to receive a 10% discount off of any book project. Get started right away and become a published author in as little as 45 days. For your free 1-hour book formula guide, which will show you just how painless it can be to become an author, head to hasslefreebooks.com today.
All right. Thanks again for joining me. Let's get started with today's show.
Took a walk down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of life.
Welcome to Unpause Your Life. I'm Dr. Callie Estes with the Addictions Coach and the Addictions Academy. I've got a new guest today, Dr. David Henderson. Very excited to have him on. He is a board-certified psychiatrist, author, and speaker. He's the founder and president of Four Stones Collaborative, a mental health consulting group in Dallas, Texas. Go Cowboys. He sees adolescent and adult clients with a wide range of psychiatric disorders, including depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, delusional disorders, and substance abuse. Prior to starting Four Stones, Dr. Henderson partnered with an organization called Southwest Clinical and Forensics, where he offered a number of services, including psychiatric medication management, individual and family counseling, and expert witness testimony in family, civil, and criminal matters for the Dallas and surrounding county courts. Welcome, Dr. Henderson.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on the show.
Very excited to have you. So let's start with Go Cowboys, because that's my team. I'm assuming you're a Dallas Cowboy fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Although they're a little bit discouraging this year to watch them. So hopefully next year.
Oh, you'll understand this. Discouraging is an understatement. My husband was curled up in a fetal position for 2 days.
There were a lot of people extremely upset, but hey, that's the way it is, the nature of the beast.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
So let's talk about your work with adolescents. I'm very interested in what you're seeing with the adolescent population, the failure to launch kids, 18 to 25, 30, that are having trouble moving forward or feeling stuck. Tell me what you're seeing.
Well, I started working as a psychiatrist. It's been over 10 years ago now, and I've seen a number of different diagnoses, and I see a wide age range of clients. And I really started just kind of falling into the adolescent and 20-something population through the area where I'm located. Actually, my office, I'm looking right now out over the campus of Southern Methodist University. Our office is right across from Southern Methodist University, over 75. And a lot of the college students that I see attend SMU. And, I'd done some work with teenagers, began to start speaking and interacting with families, with young adults who were just failing to launch. And interestingly, I had the opportunity to speak at, here in Dallas, the adolescent symposium that they do every year. And I did a talk on what I described as zombies and vampires. I sort of made the parallel between the undead in fiction and what a lot of I was seeing in terms of the hearts and the minds of the teenagers that were coming into my office, describing a state of, feeling dead inside. And I really started asking myself the question, what is the deal? What's the problem here? We live in a society that is very affluent. These are kids that have almost anything at their disposal in terms of resources for their own success. So why are these kids struggling so much? And ended up writing a book as a result of it called My Teenage Zombie, Resurrecting the Undead Adolescent in Your Home. And in the book began to focus on the state of our adolescents and young adults today and the struggles that they're having with getting out and getting away from their family of origin and starting to actually live a productive, independent life on their own. And so that was really the impetus to get me started. And since that time, I've seen hundreds of adolescents and their families, done a lot of work. And bullying certainly is a big issue that comes up that we talk about and focus on, quite a bit in my practice. But all sorts of issues, including depression, anxiety, substance abuse. This is stuff that really begins to start in the teenage years. And if we can do some preventative work through therapy and through diagnostic measures, I think identifying the nature and the source of the problems, we can really save a lot of people's lives. So it's exciting from that standpoint.
So let me ask you this. Is there any one thing that you're seeing across the board that may be causing the zombie-like feeling where they don't feel connected, they feel dead inside? Is there anything that's across the board or cohesive amongst your clients, or is it random?
Well, there's definitely two major things that I think adolescents struggle with. One is, I think, an issue of entitlement. There's a certain set of teenagers and the millennials in general have gotten a bad rap in the sense of being labeled as entitled, labeled as being lazy. There is an element of truth to some of that. Let's face it, we have so much at our disposal now in society that I didn't have when I was a teenager in terms of technology and resources, things that make life literally at the edge of our fingertips. And so it would stand to reason that there's some lack of motivation to really work hard and a sense of entitlement that, hey, the world owes me a living. I deserve to have a happy and carefree life. And when it doesn't play out that way, as it inevitably does not, there's a huge sense of discouragement that can really throw a teenager who is unprepared to deal with the difficulties of life, both circumstantially and emotionally. It really throws them into a situation where they can become quite depressed, quite discouraged, and it's working on changing their mindset. And then the other group of individuals are those who really have faced a lot of what I would call micro traumas, even, blatantly abusive circumstances, whether it's at school or in their home, that has really impacted the development of their self-identity. And it's in those adolescent years where you're formulating your own understanding of yourself, your relationships, and the world around you. And if you don't have a supportive environment that's conducive for developing a healthy identity, you're going to struggle. And so it may be two distinct poles in terms of those that I see who are struggling, but those are some of the key major issues, this issue of entitlement and then this issue of trauma and a lack of support in their development.
So having been doing this for such a long time, I would say the second one, the trauma, we've had throughout time. So that's nothing new. But the social media aspect of having the world at your disposal, that's new for most of us, I mean, we used the phone that was connected to the wall growing up, and that was pretty much what you got, and a payphone. You didn't have Facebook, and you didn't have checking yourself in and who's watching me and who's counting my likes and, does my hair look right? And did I post the perfect selfie? We didn't have all of that. And then
Exactly.
what do you think about this too? And I'm curious to see your opinion. When we were growing up, you went to school, you graduated high school, you got a diploma, you wore a cap and gown when you were in 12th grade. Now you graduate preschool, you get a cap and gown, you get a diploma. You graduate middle school, then you graduate high school, and nobody gets cut from the football team. Nobody's cut from the cheerleading squad. So when these kids go out to get a job and they interview with 80 other people and they don't get the job, they're devastated. How could this happen? Are you seeing that in your practice?
Yes, absolutely. You bring up some really good points. The one is the social media aspect. We as human beings, let's face it, we take anything that is good for us, anything that is necessary for us, and in our own ingenuity and creativity, we try to make those good things as readily available with as little effort as possible. And that's a natural response, but there's a cost involved with that. So, for example, in the old days, when you wanted to eat, you either needed to go out and pick the berries or harvest the field or kill the fatted calf and do a whole lot of preparation in order to be able to sustain yourself in terms of food. Now, in our society, I can roll out of bed and hop down to the local Krispy Kreme donut shop and get a dozen donuts for relatively inexpensive, get a quick sugar rush, and be on about my day with very little amount of effort. The problem with that is that kind of energy, that kind of food source is not a sustainable energy source for me. The true types of food that we really need, the true foods that are really going to provide a lot of energy and sustenance are things that we still have to work to prepare, and we've got to be intentional about it. The same is true with our need to connect with people. We've created a system, namely social media, that allows us to be connected with thousands of people through the internet. But there's a superficiality to that connection, and there's a sort of deception in our own minds that says, I'm connected, I'm engaged, I'm involved in all these people's lives, but we're really tricking ourselves because in true relationships, true face-to-face daily interactions, there is friction, there is pain, there is conflict, and a growth in any relationship really requires that important work that needs to be done to strengthen a relationship. Now, we've got a lot of teenagers and young people who their primary means of communication with those around them is through a computer screen. And so they can filter everything they say, and they can avoid the direct consequences of staring someone in the face when you've said something that's offensive or hurtful and having to see their reactions and their responses to it. We've lost that ability, so much so that when millennials go out and get their first job, there are a lot of business owners who are requiring millennials to have social skills training because they just don't know how to interact in a healthy way in a business setting. So your point to social media being something new, it's a whole new beast that I don't think we've really tapped into all of the ways in which it's affecting us, both positively and negatively. But certainly I'm seeing that in my practice a lot, the negative effects that social media can have on a child's ability to really connect and communicate with those around them.
Now, we can even take that one step further with the keyboard commando bullying concept. Back in the day on the schoolyard, if you were going to bully someone, you did it in front of people who may or may not have stopped you, in front of teachers who may or may not have punished you and put you in detention. There was actual consequences for what you were going to do. Now, you can get on social media and you can post nasty things about someone. You can tell them to kill themselves, and generally that could happen. And that's a new concept, relative to our society, because that's not something that happened 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. So are you seeing kids that have been bullied or adults that have been bullied on social media with concepts like that?
Sure, and it's devastating. It's somewhat like what we see when someone uses sarcasm as a means of communicating. Sarcasm leaves the duty and the responsibility of interpretation of the statements being made on the shoulders of the person receiving the communication. So, I can say to somebody, hey, that's a really cool shirt. Did you get that at Walmart or did you find it at the Goodwill? I'm being sarcastic in my comments, but I'm leaving the person's interpretation of those comments and then their response to it on their shoulders. Because if they respond in an offended way, then I can say, hey, I was just joking. Why are you being so serious? Or if they get upset and overwhelmed or they laugh it off, they may be dismissing something that was really meant as a jab. Well, in terms of social media, that takes a whole nother level because there's a lack of tonal inflection in the voice. There's a lack of facial expression that's being read and seen and witnessed. There's a lack of body habitus that we don't get a sense of. And then there's also, from both the giving and the taking end, there is a lag time in seeing and reacting to the responses that are taking place. So you can imagine checking your social media account and getting a nasty note or a bullying statement and then having to sit with that for days, perhaps, until you see the person face to face, or responding in kind and maybe never getting a reaction or response or any kind of reciprocation. You're left in this place of isolation and loneliness and disconnect that can be devastating. And that is so hard for people who are really trying to develop a sense of identity and confidence and significance to have to face. And so working with teenagers on how do I shore up my own sense of self when, one, what I'm seeing on the internet being posted, even if it's not directly about me, is showing these lives of people all around me who are having fun, they're going to parties, they're going on vacation, everything they post is happy and wonderful and great and exciting. And here I am sitting here with all these emotions of sadness and discouragement and I'm comparing myself to this facade that I see on the screen, and it's very discouraging. But then you add on to that the abuse that can take place through social media, and we've really got to prepare our young people for facing these kinds of things and helping them to develop the confidence and the identity that they need to survive and ultimately thrive in their personal relationships and in their circumstances of life.
I want to touch on the first one you just mentioned, which is the fun persona. It's when you get on Facebook or you get on Instagram, you're right. It's this fun persona. Look at them in their PJs at Christmas in front of the tree. Wow, look at the happy family. Look how excited they are. And you have somebody else sitting there watching that going, well, I don't have that happy family. We're not taking pictures in front of the tree. We're arguing. Or so-and-so's in rehab, or so-and-so's having a meltdown. My life doesn't look like that. And then they watch those profiles and they say it's an unrealistic expectation of what their life should be because the person only posts the good times. You don't see the bad things from that particular individual. And then you have the reverse. You have the other individual who's constant negativity. My life sucks. No one loves me. No one cares. It's negative, 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 trying to get a reaction from someone to make them feel better. So it seems like we've got this weird dichotomy on social media, either that my life is perfect and it's really not, we just don't see it, or my life is miserable and I need someone to make me feel better, almost become my therapist.
Right. And that's a great point. And seeing it from the negative end too. There are a lot of teenagers and young people who get on social media and they vent and they're describing all their problems. And there is a quick sort of equivalent of a sugar rush that you get when you get 100 likes, thumbs up symbols or sad faces or reactions that gives you that boost that, people are hearing me, people are listening to me. So that there's almost an addictive quality to it. And my recommendation to clients is, and the first recommendation is always the one that people balk at the most when you say, get off social media. I hear this argument over and over and over again that says, but I can't do that because I would be totally disconnected from all my friends and everybody around me. I get the sentiment behind that argument and the rationale behind that argument. But if you're looking at something like this as an addiction, abstinence is necessary for certain people. And there are other ways to make connections. There are other ways to engage people outside of social media. I think we've deluded ourselves to think that we can't connect with others except through social media. So I always recommend abstinence. If abstinence is not possible for whatever reason, or just there's an unwillingness towards that, then I encourage individuals to practice what I would call active use of social media, not passive use. Active use of social media means you get on social media with a specific intention in mind. If you're getting online to connect with people, well, then do just that. Connect with people for a purpose. Maybe it's to announce, a party that you're having, or maybe it's to reach out to a specific friend and say, hey, I've been thinking about you. How are you doing? But there's an active intention in why you're doing it. Passive use of social media is, well, I'm bored. I don't have anything else to do. So just like I would turn on Netflix or, a movie or play video games, I'm just going to get on social media and scroll through my news feed. That is the absolute worst decision that you can make when engaging social media, because that's where the studies are showing that depression sets in, a sense of not measuring up and not comparing to others sets in, and where a lot of times you start engaging in behaviors like reaching out, asking for help, where people are getting bullied. These kinds of things start happening. If you're only engaging social media actively, then you're saving yourself from a lot of this discouragement that people feel.
That's interesting you said that, because New Year's Eve, we traditionally don't do anything. My husband and I, we kind of just lay low, relax. And I found myself about 11:30 scrolling through Facebook. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just looking at the fun everyone else is having. And I stopped and I went, am I seriously looking at people having fun on Facebook? And he goes, get off that thing. And I put it down. It was, even though I know the power of social media and I know what Facebook does and I know how people get sucked in, I found myself wondering what everyone else was doing. Instead of picking up the phone, calling and saying, hey, what are you guys doing? Or Happy New Year. It was, oh, let's just check out Facebook. So I don't want to limit that type of discussion to just the millennials. I think that happens to all of us. We get caught up in what's happening out there, and an hour goes by, 2 hours go by, and we go, what did I just do? I sat here and, screwed around on Facebook for 2 hours and got nothing accomplished.
Correct. And so there's a challenge there, and it definitely, I think we're all guilty of that. And so here's my recommendation to folks that maybe struggle with that passive use of scrolling. You've heard the expression, something is better than nothing. And I use that expression often with people who are struggling with motivation. Let's use the gym as an example. I really want to get back in shape. I want to start going to the gym and working out. Well, a lot of people start out with this grand plan of, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to run 3 miles on the treadmill, and then I'm going to, lift 225 pounds on the bench press machine. And I say, no. Let's start out more simply and do something. Instead of having these grand plans, let's just go to the gym and let's just walk around and look at the weights and see other people working out. If you just get to the gym, that's an accomplishment in and of itself. So if it's a choice between going and doing this massive workout or not going at all, let's meet somewhere in the middle and lower the goals and do something, because something is better than nothing. But then in terms of social media and all these other things, I take it a step further and I say to folks, nothing is better than waste. And I think this is the problem in our society with the technology that we have available to us. We always have the capability to be doing something, even if it is wasteful, even if it is something that adds nothing of value and significance to my life. And we as a society, we are uncomfortable with sitting in inactivity. We are uncomfortable with not having anything to stimulate our minds and our bodies. And so we often find ourselves gravitating to activities that are really wasteful. They don't do anything for us, but they make us feel busy. And I encourage people, nothing is better than waste. So if you can sit, they actually did a study looking at individuals who would come into the office in the morning, and for about 10 minutes, they would sit at their desk and do absolutely nothing for 10 minutes. Those individuals were more productive in the day than people who just came right in and started working. The goal is to allow yourself time to sit with emotion, sit with a sense of longing, a sense of not accomplishing anything. But doing that is better than wasteful things like scrolling through Facebook. So if you can just sit for 10 minutes and not check Facebook, that's an accomplishment. So I try to get people to think in that terminology and that idea of how you see yourself in your activity, and putting the pause button on is so hard in our society, but it's absolutely necessary if we want to break this cycle of wasteful actions.
I find that interesting, the way you posed it as wasteful, because sometimes there's times when it's not wasteful, but it's intrusive. For example, I was out to dinner with about 6 of my colleagues. We're sitting around, we're talking, and someone posed a very interesting debate question. And instead of us debating, the one person went, "Let me Google that," and grabbed their phone and Googled it. So the debate became, okay, now we have the answer. Now we're not going to debate the topic because we have what Google told us, and everyone knows Google's 100% correct 100% of the time. So we had this answer, and then the dialogue was over. So I proposed with my friends, when we go out, we all put our phones in the center of the table, upside down, and the first person that has to grab their phone pays the bill. And the first time I did it, it was so interesting. Everybody kept reaching for it and then remembered there's 6 of us. That's going to be a pretty hefty bill, and I don't want to pay that. So eventually, one of the doctors I was with grabbed his phone. He's like, "I have to see if there's any patients, and I said, "Sure you do." So it was so interesting, and how tethered even us as professionals are to our phone. Not just, social media, but what if I miss a text? What if I miss a call? 10 years ago, we didn't have that. If we needed to make a phone call, we used a payphone or the phone in our house. We weren't tethered to the social media. And it's so difficult to get people to say, just put your phone down and have a conversation with me without looking something up or checking your messages or scrolling through your feeds. Are you, even with the people you work with and your staff and your colleagues, do you see that across the board as well? Or is it just an intergenerational thing?
No, I think that's across the board. And I think the more that we engage technology, the more there is that temptation to constantly be plugged in. And so sometimes it even requires a physical separation. Your example of actually taking the phone and putting it in the center of the table is perfect. A simple action like that helps the brain associate that disconnect, and it gives you just that split second of contemplation of, do I really want to grab my phone and check it? And if the answer is yes, then okay, go ahead. If you have patience or whatever, you need to check your voicemails, but then take that phone and put it back out into the center of the table. Give yourself a buffer. It's the same advice that I give clients who are struggling with insomnia. Only use the bed for sleep and sex. Those are the only 2 activities that you should be doing in bed. And if you're going to do anything else, get out of bed. Why? Because the body learns through association. And I'll use that with business executives that I'm consulting with and counseling with, is if you're having problems with productivity, don't try to regulate the amount of time that you're spending on social media versus doing your reports and things. Just create physical separation. So if you're sitting at your desk, only use the desk for doing work. And if you want to check social media, well, then just simply get up from the desk or even stand up at your desk and check social media. And when you're done, sit back down and start working again. Creating that little bit of separation helps establish an association where the body and the brain is making that distinction between times of work and times of play and relaxation and activities. And finding little subtle ways of implementing that into your day can really have a profound effect on your energy level, on your sleep quality, on your mood, and on your feelings of productivity.
That's great. That's great advice. That's fantastic. Now, I've got a question for you. Have you come across any clients, the younger generation, that are having difficulty expressing their feelings and their thoughts through words, but on a text message, they can tell you everything?
That's a great question. Yeah, and I've actually had that question posed before at a conference that I spoke at. And at the time, I remember this was several years back, I thought, wow, that's an interesting thought. I definitely believe that the ability to text enables someone to cognitively process what they're putting down, read it over, sort of edit their statements. And so, yes, there are adolescents who are more able to communicate through texting because they have that filter, because they have that little bit of buffer between the person and the message. Whereas in face-to-face conversation, it requires, I think, more of a skill set in real time. It's faster pace. I don't necessarily get the direct feel for that because I don't do text therapy. I don't meet with my clients, over the phone or doing text messages. But I've certainly seen with adolescents and with young people the difficulty in having a face-to-face verbal conversation. It's a little bit more challenging for them.
I've been getting more of those. And because I do phone work and Skype work and text work, I've got 2 right now that refuse the phone and Skype. It has to be text only. And believe it or not, one has been making strides. The other one is it's not working. So I was curious to what your thoughts would be on that, because both of them come from trauma and both of them are drug addicts, which is even more interesting. They're hiding behind everything, including the personal interaction. So what recommendation do you make for parents who are seeing their kids that just don't want to socially interact? They want to play Xbox and they want to be on the phone and they don't like communicating. And whether they have trauma or addiction or not, they're struggling with that human interaction. What are some things parents can do, some takeaways?
Well, one would be I would encourage parents to lead by example first and foremost. You don't have to force, and you can't really force an adolescent to communicate with you verbally, but you can require certain times of the day and environments where that verbal communication is taking place in their presence. And if parents can sit down at the dinner table or have designated periods of time where the family converses in general without necessarily putting anyone on the spot, and maybe it's the parents who take ownership of that and communicate with one another in the presence of their kids, you're leading by example and you're demonstrating what that looks like. And I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, if you're talking about something specific, you're going to have adolescents that are going to want to jump in and they're going to want to make their case and their statements. What one person I know calls sparring, a family that I know will pick a topic and they'll just simply do some sparring on the issue or the subject, really pushing people to verbalize their views and opinions. I also encourage parents, if your school has a debate team, that there's something to that. Getting the training or the education on how to speak publicly is often good. But it's really, I think, in the end, it's leading by example. It's also a matter of giving adolescents time to process their thoughts. So asking a question, you may not get the answer that you want, but designate a time when they have to come back to you and when they have to talk to you face to face about what it is that you want to know. So if you ask them about their day and they don't have anything to say about it, well, come back to me about 10 minutes when you're ready to talk about it, because this is something we need to discuss. But definitely allowing for that space and time for that communication to take place is going to be extremely important.
That's fantastic advice, because I think our generation, or my generation anyway, we expect answers. We were asked questions from our parents and we were told, you give an answer. You have to be able to back up your work. You have to explain where you work, explain what your goals are. These are things you need to know. And there was so much dialogue to create that. Now we had kids, and I have he's going to be 25-year-old stepson, and I'll ask him a question and he'll stare at me and I'll say, you don't have an answer for that. And it took me a little while to learn that's not how his brain functions. I can't expect an answer. I have to wait and give him time. It takes him about 24 hours to give me an answer on what I ask. So for parents, it's also about us learning that our learning style and their learning style and our cognitive process and their cognitive process are not the same thing. And demanding something that the person is incapable of providing only creates animosity and frustration.
Sure, and if you're gonna require and demand something from someone, you've got to give them the tools and the time and the opportunity to grow into that. It would be like an employer-employee situation. You know, you hire an employee, and if you believe that they're capable of doing the job, you've got to give them every tool that you can as the employer that to enable them to accomplish the task. And I think the same is true with communication with our kids. We've got to give them the skills and the tools necessary to grow into what it is that we are trying to get them to accomplish and see. And it requires a lot of intentionality on our part. There's work involved in being a parent and challenging our kids to engage in this way. And we're going to be held to account, for that same standard. And so if we're not able to practice that and live that out, then we certainly can't demand it from our kids. So it's a give and take, it's a processing, it's a growing experience for everyone involved. And that's really, in some ways, it's difficult, but it's also the joy of being in any relationship, is that learning and that growth into the relationship and the connection, the deeper connection that develops as a result.
Wow, fascinating stuff. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and tell our listeners where they can find you and where they can find your book and how they can reach you.
Absolutely. If folks want to reach out, shoot me an email. I'm happy to correspond. My website is fourstonesgroup.com. That's all spelled out, fourstonesgroup.com. And my email address is simply dhenderson@fourstonesgroup.com. And folks can find the book, My Teenage Zombie, on Amazon, or they can go to my website, and there's a link there on the website as well. For the book. So more than happy to dialogue with folks. And if there are any questions that come up, I'd love to process that and chat with anybody that's interested.
Sounds good. And thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sure. And you've been listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes and my guest, Dr. David Henderson. Please give us a listen and check out his book, My Teenage Zombie, on Amazon.com. Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. I really hope you enjoyed the show today. Head on over to iTunes and Apple Podcasts and leave a comment or review of what you think. Or contact us at 1-800-706-0318. If you want to be on our show, feel free to email or call. And if you have a topic, feel free to email or call as well.
Thanks for listening to Unpause Your Life. For show notes and more, head on over to unpauseyourlife.com.
Big shout out to recoveryinnovators.com for help producing this show. Thank you guys.
I took a walk down the long road where they said that I shouldn't go. On my way found a reason to wake up another day, but they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape in love with my pain. I may be awake, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your random down the dark road where they said that I shouldn't go. I knew the dangers of flying. Now I'm so far from solid ground. But they needed to show you all the things that you won't do. Find faith or religion, but nothing to show for it. No need to escape in love with my pain. I may be weak, but I'm alive, still alive, and I won't be bound by your mistake. No, I won't be your enemy, trapped at the gate. Bring me to life, put me to death, just give me something